It started with a piece of paper. Something so ordinary, so boring, that I almost tossed it into the shredder without looking. A stack of old files had spilled from the drawer in my dad's office while I was hunting for a spare charger. Receipts, bank statements, tax forms, mundane clutter that didn't mean anything to me. But then one form caught my eye. A tax return, yellowed at the edges, with my dad's name printed neatly at the top. I almost put it aside until I noticed the section labeled Dependents. 3 names, mine, and then 2 more I had never seen before, with ages listed that made them close to mine. My heart stuttered. At first, I thought maybe they were distant relatives, cousins he claimed for some reason, but next to them was a woman's name, different from my mom's. A second household. My blood ran cold. I stood there for a long time, staring at the numbers on the page until they blurred. My dad had always been the proud family man, the one who posted our smiling vacation photos online, who gave speeches at Thanksgiving about loyalty, who introduced me as his pride and joy. The idea that he could be hiding something so enormous, so destructive, made my stomach twist. I shoved the papers back into the drawer and left before he or my mom could ask why I'd been snooping. That night, lying awake in bed, I replayed every memory with him. The late nights at work, the mysterious weekend trips, the unexplained phone calls he always stepped outside to take. All the puzzle pieces were there. I'd just never put them together. And now that I had, I wished I could unsee the picture. For weeks, I told myself it was a mistake, that maybe there was an explanation, maybe it wasn't what it looked like, but the document gnawed at me, demanding answers. So one night, I opened my laptop and typed the unfamiliar names into Facebook. And there they were, smiling photos of 2 kids, a boy and a girl, in another city just 2 hours away. Their profiles were tagged with a woman who looked happy and put together, posing in family photos with my father. My father. I scrolled until my hands went numb, each picture hitting me like a slap. Birthdays, graduations, vacations, my dad grinning ear to ear with them, the same way he grinned at me. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. He wasn't just cheating, he'd built an entire second life, complete with children he acknowledged online, but kept secret from me and my mom. I didn't know what to do with the knowledge. I carried it like a stone in my stomach, smiling at family dinners, while rage and grief churned underneath. Every time Dad teased me about not dating seriously, or nagged me about when I'd finally give him grandkids, I wanted to scream. How dare he lecture me about family when he was living a lie? The breaking point came one Sunday afternoon. We were sitting in the living room, the TV humming in the background, when he looked at me with that condescending smirk. You know, Sarah, maybe if you were more like my friend's daughter, settled, successful, engaged, you'd be happier. Not everyone can be the perfect child. The word sliced through me. Perfect child. My throat burned, and before I could stop myself, I blurted, "Do your other kids know how perfect you think they are?" His smile faltered for the briefest second, but then he laughed it off, shaking his head. "You're too sensitive," but I saw it, the flicker of fear in his eyes. That was the moment I decided. If he wouldn't tell the truth, I would. I spent the next week in a haze, my mind spinning with questions. How long had this been going on? Did Mom know? Did the other woman know about us? Every time I looked at my father across the dinner table, my chest tightened. He would smile, crack a dumb dad joke, ask me about work, and all I could see was the photographs of him with the other kids, his arms slung around them like he had never missed a moment of their lives. The betrayal felt so sharp I could hardly breathe. One night, while everyone was asleep, I sat in the dark with my laptop glowing in front of me and typed out a message. It was shaky, clumsy at first. "Hi, this might sound strange, but I think we might share the same dad." I stared at the words, my finger hovering over the send button, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. And then, with a deep breath, I clicked send. 2 days passed before I got a reply. It wasn't from the kids. It was from the woman. Her name was Marianne, and her message was short. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I imagined her furious, ready to deny everything, ready to attack me for daring to contact her. But when we finally spoke on the phone, her voice wasn't angry, it was weary. "I knew about your mom," she said softly. "But I thought you knew about us." "He told me you did." My mouth went dry. "No," I whispered. "I had no idea." There was a long silence, and then she said something that broke me. "The kids don't know either. They think he's just a busy man with work obligations. They don't know he's been living a double life." Her voice cracked on the last words. Suddenly, the ground beneath me felt even shakier. Not only had my father lied to me and my mother, he had lied to them too. After that call, I couldn't look at him the same. I watched him sit at the table, scrolling through his phone, occasionally smiling to himself, at a text I couldn't see. I wondered if it was Marianne. I wondered if it was one of the kids, sending him a photo of a school project or asking for help with homework, and if he was sitting there answering them while ignoring me. The unfairness of it all gnawed at me. My whole life, I had bent over backwards for his approval, chasing his praise like it was oxygen, and here were two other children, blissfully unaware that they were part of a secret. When he mocked me again a week later, something small, just a jab about how I wasn't accomplished enough compared to his co-workers' kids, I felt the rage surge hot in my chest. That was when the idea took root. If he wanted to keep living in two worlds, I would drag those worlds together. I called Marianne again, my voice steady this time. "I want them to know," I said. "I want them to see who he really is." At first, she hesitated, torn between protecting her children and confronting the truth. But the more we talked, the more she realized she'd been living in a cage of lies too. Finally, she agreed. We didn't plan a slow reveal. We didn't plan a careful conversation. We planned a spectacle. My father's 60th birthday party was coming up. A grand event he'd been bragging about for months, with relatives flying in, a rented hall, the whole production designed to paint him as the family man of the century. It was the perfect stage. Together, Marianne and I crafted the ultimate surprise. On the night of his party, she and her children would walk in, uninvited, and the mask my father had worn for 15 years would shatter in front of everyone. The weeks leading up to the party were unbearable. Every time Dad spoke about his big day, pride swelling in his voice, I felt a mix of disgust and anticipation coil inside me. He paraded around the house, bragging about how the whole family would be there, how it was going to be the event of the year, how he had built such a strong legacy. I wanted to scream, "Legacy?" His entire life was a carefully constructed lie. Mom was busy with decorations and catering, fussing over details, blissfully unaware that the foundation of her marriage was about to crumble. Watching her smile, humming while she strung lights, nearly broke me. Guilt chewed at my insides, because I knew that when the truth came out, it would shatter her. But then I'd hear Dad laughing in the other room, talking on the phone in hushed tones, and my resolve hardened again. She deserved the truth, even if it broke her heart. In secret, I coordinated with Marianne. We exchanged messages late at night, hashing out logistics like two conspirators planning a coup. She would arrive at the party with her children, a boy and a girl just a little younger than me, both neatly dressed and completely unsuspecting of the storm they were walking into. She had finally told them the truth, or at least part of it. "Your father has another family," she admitted, her voice shaking when she told me afterward. The kids were devastated, confused, angry. But when she asked if they wanted to meet me, to see the man for who he truly was, they both said yes. That broke something inside me. I wasn't just exposing my father. I was dragging innocent kids into the wreckage. But when I thought about how he'd lied to them their entire lives, I realized I wasn't the one destroying anything. He was. I was just turning on the lights. The night before the party, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying how it would go, what my dad's face would look like, how my mom would react, whether relatives would scream or storm out. Would people take sides? Would they blame me for the chaos? I paced my room, my palms sweating, my heart pounding as if the confrontation had already begun. At one point, I almost called Marianne to call it off, but then I remembered the way Dad had sneered at me a week ago, calling me ungrateful when I didn't laugh at one of his tired jokes. The way he had looked at me as if I were a disappointment, not a daughter. Rage pushed away the fear. I wasn't ruining his party. I was saving my family from living in the dark any longer. The day arrived. The hall was decorated in gold and navy, balloons clustered around the tables, relatives streaming in with gifts and hugs. My father basked in the attention, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, grinning like a king surveying his kingdom. I stayed in the corner, my chest tight, waiting for the clock to strike the hour Marianne and I had agreed upon. My mom looked beautiful in her dress, fussing with centerpieces, smiling at everyone. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood, knowing that smile wouldn't last. When the doors finally opened and Marianne stepped inside with her children at her side, the room fell silent, like the air itself had been sucked out. My father's grin froze, his glass of champagne trembling in his hand, and in that moment, I knew. The mask he'd worn for 15 years was about to crumble in front of everyone he had fooled. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. The music sputtered into silence, forks hovered midair, and the hall filled with a low murmur of confusion. Marianne stood tall, her hand gently resting on the shoulder of her son, while her daughter clutched her purse with nervous fingers. They looked so much like me it hurt. Same eyes, same awkward way of standing, same nervous twist in their smiles. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Who are they? Is that his—" And then all eyes swung to my father. His face had gone pale, his jaw tight, his champagne glass clinking against the table as he tried to steady it. For once, the man who always had a quick word, a charming joke, a disarming smile, had nothing. Just silence, cold and guilty. It was my mom who broke first. "Robert," she said, her voice trembling. "What's going on?" She looked from the strangers in the doorway to my father, then back again, her confusion twisting into dawning horror. Dad stammered, It's not what it looks like." The words sounded pathetic even to my ears. Marianne stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "It's exactly what it looks like. For 15 years, Robert has been living with me and our children in Huntsville. He told me your family knew. He told me Sarah knew." Gasps filled the room. My mother staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth as if she'd been struck. Relatives shifted uncomfortably, torn between disbelief and outrage. I felt the world tilt under me, but instead of collapsing, I stood taller. This was the truth, and it was finally out. My father turned toward me, desperation flashing in his eyes. "Sarah," he hissed, his voice cracking. "You did this?" For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink under his glare. "Yes," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. "You paraded around like the perfect father, lecturing me about my life while you were lying to all of us. They deserved to know. Mom deserved to know. Everyone deserved to see the man you really are." His face twisted with fury, but before he could respond, his son, my half-brother, spoke. "You told us you traveled for work. You said you stayed late at the office. You said—" His voice cracked, and he looked at his father with betrayal so raw it made the room ache. "How could you?" Chaos erupted. My mother began sobbing, her sister wrapping an arm around her as relatives shouted over one another. Some defended Dad, muttering that it wasn't the time or place. Others turned on him with anger, accusing him of humiliating the family. My father's carefully constructed empire was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He slammed his glass down, shattering it across the floor, and barked, "This is my birthday. You will not ruin it." But the damage was done. Marianne held her children close. My mother turned away in tears, and I stood in the middle of it all, trembling but unbroken. For once, my father wasn't in control. For once, the truth was louder than his lies. The hall descended into bedlam. Relatives argued in loud, frantic voices, some demanding answers, others whispering about leaving before things got uglier. My father tried to shout above the noise, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, but every word he spoke only fueled the chaos. My mother stood like stone, her eyes locked on him, her face drained of color. 15 years, she whispered, her voice shaking with fury. You looked me in the eyes every night. You slept in my bed, and you had them? You raised children with another woman while pretending we were your only family? Her words sliced through the room like knives. Dad reached for her hand, but she recoiled as if his touch burned. Don't, she spat. Don't you dare! Across the room, Marianne's daughter began crying, hiding her face against her mother's shoulder. My half-brother glared at Dad with a mix of rage and heartbreak. His fists clenched so tightly, his knuckles went white. You lied to us, he said, his voice low but trembling. You let us believe we were your whole world, and now we find out we're just your second act? His voice cracked, and my chest ached for him, for them. They weren't the villains in this story. They were victims too. I wanted to reach out, to tell him I understood the betrayal, that I had felt it too, but the chaos around us swallowed every word. And then came the relatives' judgments. My father's brother slammed his fist on the table. Robert, you've disgraced us! How could you let this happen? My aunt hissed at me. Sarah, you could have handled this privately. You didn't have to humiliate your father like this. Her words stung, but I refused to flinch. Privately? I shot back. He's been lying for 15 years. Privately is what allowed this to keep happening. Everyone deserves to know the truth. The room fell quiet for just a moment, and in that silence, I realized something. This wasn't just about exposing my dad. It was about freeing myself, freeing my mom, freeing those kids from the cage of his lies. But guilt still tugged at me. Watching my mom crumble, seeing Marianne's children suffer the shock of betrayal, I wondered if I'd gone too far. I had lit the match that set this party ablaze, and now no one would leave unscathed. Yet beneath the guilt, a strange calm settled in me. My father's empire of lies had finally burned down. There would be scars, but there would also be freedom. He couldn't hide anymore. He couldn't pit us against each other in the shadows. The truth was out in the open, and there was no going back. The party never recovered. Guests began leaving in clusters, muttering under their breath, some shaking their heads in disgust, while others avoided eye contact entirely. The grand hall that was supposed to be my father's moment of glory now looked like a battlefield. Tables half abandoned, cake untouched, decorations drooping as if the room itself were ashamed. My father tried to chase after relatives, insisting they listen, but no one cared. His words were hollow now, stripped of the power they once held. For the first time in my life, I saw him for what he truly was. A man who had built his image on lies, and now had nothing left when the truth burned it down. My mom stood rigid by the door, her purse clutched in trembling hands. She didn't scream, she didn't argue. She simply turned to him and said, "You've embarrassed me for the last time." Her voice was cold, final, and it cut through the noise sharper than any shout. Then she walked out, head held high, relatives rushing to support her as tears welled in her eyes. Marianne followed soon after with her children, their faces still pale with shock. My father reached for them, but they pulled away. The sight of him standing there, abandoned by both families in the ruins of his own celebration, should have made me pity him, but I didn't, not anymore. He hadn't made his choices. Now he had to live with them. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was brutal. My mom filed for divorce. Relatives cut ties. His reputation in the community collapsed almost overnight. He went from being the admired family man to the whispered about fraud everyone avoided. Meanwhile, I found an unexpected strength rising in me. For years, I had swallowed his insults, his lectures, his endless comparisons. I had carried the weight of wanting to be enough for him. But the night of his party, I let all of that go. I wasn't his disappointment. I wasn't his project. I was his reckoning. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. So I'll leave you with this. If you uncovered a secret like this, another family, another life hidden in plain sight, would you keep the peace to protect those you love, or would you expose the truth, no matter how much destruction it caused? I made my choice. What would yours be?